Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, here for a brief, quick extra Xcom 2 video with some tips I'd personally perhaps like to have known initially. I mean, there's been some stuff here and there, but overall nothing I sort of really found was very fulfilling about, so how to perhaps do a little less terribly in Xcom 2. So, what sort of things might, be handy to know when you start out the game? Well, for starters, in terms of research, where you want to sort of put the effort, generally as a rule of thumb always, is guns. You want more firepower. Survivability just doesn't really cut in the game. I mean, it's not something to rely on at all. It's nice, it sort of helps cover up mistakes, but overall, as a rule of thumb, you want the enemy to die as fast as possible. So, for example, when you start the game, once you've got sort of the initial research out of the way, you want magnetic weapons, for example. Plated armor comes later on. And again, when the next tier hits with plasma and power armor, you want plasma first. That's not to say the armor doesn't have some good things to it. You got, for example, the exosuits and the war suits, all good things. If we can sort of find which soldier here have them, sort of just briefly show it off, just to sort of give you an idea. If I can remember, there we go. This is the exo. And basically, what is it that makes the Exo sort of great? It adds an extra heavy weapon, which basically sort of gives you access to a lot more equipment, overall allowing to bring a lot more firepower, which is in fact very good at sort of quickly just doing a lot of damage very quickly, annihilating, for example, large swaths of enemy. For example, in that regard, the what is it called? Oh, damn it, name escapes me, that always happens, but there we go, the Shredder gun. That one is your friend. It will shred cover, health, armor, and it can just do some nice cones, really. You want the Shredder gun as quickly as humanly possible when playing XCOM 2. Again, some ability is nice, but it doesn't cut it if your opponent gets closer, and in many cases they will just move up and, beat you down in many cases. So, generally, firepower first, survivability second. And as a rule of thumb, when it comes to this game, you want to be able to sort of shoot them down as quickly as possible. That is sort of the rule of thumb there, to sort of how the engagements basically should go. You do not want any protracted engagement, particularly not on the ones with a timer on it, but even then, you do not want a protracted engagement. That's going to hurt you. So you want to do it swift, bloody, and violently. So that's basically some things there in that regard. What sort of then, for example, you have attachments to the game, of course, which ones might then assist you as well. And overall, they all sort of work to a certain extent. Obviously, obviously you're still going to fight a lot. So, for example, an autoloader is quite handy to have, for example. That's a personal sort of thought there. Laser sights, expanded magazines. I mean, laser sights, expanded magazines aren't quite, what I go after for. The sort of weapons, sort of bits that really mean. I mean, repeaters, if you get sort of the better ones, they can sort of semi-regularly sort of work for you, in which case the repeater is actually pretty good, since it pretty much guarantees you, no matter what, it dies if that triggers. And that's good. That is really good. So, I mean, it's sort of alright, but what you really want, and I'm trying to sort of remember which of my men have it, is, for example, yes, this isn't quite going together there. Hair trigger is also nice, for example, in that sense, but it's the autoloader. It's the autoloader which is essentially king here. There we go, superior autoloader. You want that since it's pretty much a free reload, which also means in case some enemies they can actually sort of just wipe your weapon of any ammunition, that thing is going to just, make sure you're in a lot less trouble. So what you want is the autoloader. That's pretty much one of the best mods there for weapons, at least in my personal opinion. So sort of, just that, I think, is going to sort of do you a lot of good. Of course, there are a bunch of other items that are also quite helpful. Just smaller ones, flashbangs, for example. If you do end up in a bad engagement, if you do get caught off guard, the flashbang can help. Yes, it disrupts the enemies, disorients them, and basically means they can't use the ability for at least one turn, and they become a lot less accurate. So, for example, flashbang, very good. But the battle scanner is also quite helpful, allowing you to, scout ahead, ensuring you don't walk into an ambush, or at least don't do so unprepared. So that one is, for example, also quite good and can give you a lot of comfort. So that one is very much a must in terms of upgrades. Other ones that, for example, also good, tend to be anything I think that helps the gremlins. And in that sense, a very important class. Always, I think, keep in mind for most missions, in particular the ones that sort of involve, hacking things, is the specialist, because if you bring them along there for those missions, you actually have a very good chance then of gaining some pretty good bonuses when you then hack, because those bonuses can actually apply on the strategic map. That can mean you scan faster, your opponent's sort of projects get delayed, or you get a research bonus. So in that sense, having a specialist along is actually quite vital, and you want to ensure you always got at least a few, and generally some that are pretty good. Things that sort of also benefit them is, in fact, the Skulljack, once it's been upgraded, it actually gives you a bonus to hack. So in that regard, specialists are very much your friend for sort of the strategic map. Very much your friend. And I cannot emphasize that not enough. So really, always make sure to have at least one specialist along. 2 is good, have one sort of focused on combat, another one on, say, aiding. Because generally, you also want one that can sort of help heal and, revive your men, because he's going to be the only one who can get someone who's unconscious back up. As for the Advanced Warfare Center, that's also building later on in the game, but it's also one you want. It helps your troops to heal faster if you've got someone in an engineer, but it also allows you and your men basically to gain a sort of bunch of abilities they normally can't get at all. For example, he's got one here from the Ranger. Because of that, Grenadier there, and that's sort of, the sort of overlap that can happen. I have a Ranger who had killed Soul, for example, though in this case not this fellow. So if you do consider, you can, get some bonuses. In this case, for example, deep cover. That's from the Ranger to this Sharpshooter. In that sense, there's a lot of overlap there. And he's, for example, got Shredder, which basically means every single time his attacks shreds armor. So, in that sense, the Advanced Warfare Center is generally, in the longer run, a very good investment. For the Guerrilla Tactics School, overall the abilities are good, but what you want to initially focus on, for example, is Vulture, squad sizes, wet work. Those are rather the important ones. Later on, getting sort of abilities that further boost your classes is not exactly a bad idea, and certainly the other things here are not bad either, but nothing that sort of strikes me as being, vitally critical as such. So those are also some they're pretty handy things. Another thing that's also, I think, pretty handy, in fact, is quite vital, particularly in the early game, is your good friend, the Black Market. You really want to visit the Black Market often. Every month it gets a new sort of supply of things. Of course, you buy stuff for intel, but you can, of course, also sell things for a pretty reasonable price. In particular, every month there's a little thing that goes on there. Basically, every month, whatever it's interested in changes, and whatever it's interested in, you get a very good price from. Particularly, then also sort of unlock some areas there that gives you some extra bonuses to what you gain from the Black Market. So through the Black Market, you can gain a lot of supplies, and that can do you a lot of good as well. In particular, in a pinch, going to the Black Market can help you off quite a lot. But otherwise, buying additional engineers, supplies, for example, early on, rushing research again, rushing that magnetic weapons research, rushing that plated armor, all the important research, rush it as well, using intel. Of course, you also want to keep the intel for other things, but generally, there will always be that one mission every month that gives you a nice boost to intel. In that regard, you can also buy other bonuses, but don't. You'll lose the ability to gain intel by just waiting. I learned that the hard way. So learn from my mistakes. Of course, you also got radio relays, which are themselves quite handy. You don't actually need, by the way, to sort of fill up an entire region with them. You just sort of need at least sort of a bunch that sort of, almost have every sort of region covered with them, in which case you'll usually, in most cases, get the problems. You might have to explore the last one, but you don't necessarily have to build the relays. They can sort of vary a bit from region to region. For example, got relay here, explored the other one, I got the bonus. So that's also a little cost saving trick, then something also to keep in mind while playing the game. There's also these little details that help you out quite a bit here and there. But really, again, keep in mind, the trick is always just gain as much firepower. Try not to trigger them off sort of willy-nilly, but if you do, if you're sort of ready, send one running ahead in, preferably a ranger with the run and gun, so he can at least get off a shot or hunker down in. The other one support him, fire away. So I think that sort of, in that sense, again, largely covers. It's very much just, a game about bringing as much firepower as humanly possible and just annihilating everything in front of you as humanly fast as possible. Failure to do so can really result in things quickly piling on top of you. Also, one more trick. Turrets on buildings, fire a grenade at them or rocket. Just generally try to knock out the support under them. Without the roof they're standing on, they'll collapse. They won't be anywhere to do. For example, to spend a lot of time there dealing with the turret. For example, you can just, fire a grenade at it, knock out the roof, or fire a rocket at it, And that's it. And of course, remember, you can suffer, of course, from falling down. Of course, you won't be immediately annihilated unless your own health. Similarly, you can also do it with the enemy. Knock out the, ground under them, and they'll suffer a bit extra damage as they fall down. There's a few sort of extra bonuses in that sense. So I think that sort of rather covers it again. Firepower, firepower, firepower. Survivability next, but flashbangs, if you have to draw out the fight, are your friend. Flashbangs. And always just keep murdering away. Just keep murdering away. And again, try to get exosuits, war suits, get some shredder cannons, all those things. Because again, they just pack so much punch. They only have one shot, but well set up, they can really just give you what you need to sort of quickly push through your enemy and move on to sort of the next objective, whatever you need to do. So again, very good to have. And again, Advanced Warfare Center, very good to have. Proving Ground also, quite handy. In fact, you can consider secondly your second research, because some of the things here will sort of be like that. You sort of make some things constantly. Explosive ammo, experimental ammo, grenades and so on there are actually quite good as well. You can also eventually from mutants get a plasma weapon upgrade, which just plasma grenade upgrade, which just upgrades all your regular grenades to plasma. Quite handy, but again, all of these things have basically different variables. You can keep pumping out and you'll sort of get different things each time. Basically all of these, so just keep going for it. There's, for example, 3 types of experimental armor. One that heals you, one that gives extra armor and health, and one that sort of makes you immune to fire and poison, I believe it was. Powered weapons, sort of basically heavy weapons, more powerful versions of these, including a plasma weapon, grenades, incendiary, acid, which is good for going for armor, gas, and ammo includes, for example, armor-piercing rounds, which is a godsend. So there's a lot there, for example, to sort of consider. In that sense, you can also get some... Wait, was that a head just walking past? And again, you can also, with up certain bonuses there on the territories, of course, make some of them go really, really fast. And I do mean really, really fast. So, yeah. Perhaps not the most sort of in-depth, but overall I think sort of covers the vital points here of Xcom 2. So, ensure you don't quite suffer as horribly much as you try to play this game. As a rule of thumb, don't try to play anything for too fancy. I find the game tends to punish you in a rather silly way. What you want to do is sort of advance methodically, aggressively, and sort of try to set yourself up to just absolutely annihilate them within the first turn or so. Using explosives to remove any cover the enemy might have, leaving them exposed, is quite good. Also, scopes also helpful in that sense. So I think, again, that rather covers, and I've said that too many times. That's awkward. But, again, hopefully this has been helpful for some. Hopefully this has given a bit of a better idea how to play the game again, Black market, your friend. Guns, also your friend. Armor, helpful, but again, mostly to get better guns. Oh dear, that was not supposed to happen. And again, if you sort of keep those things in mind, I think you'll sort of generally find yourself doing quite well. At least I am doing now, having sort of overcome the initial pains and horrible, horrible experiences, which included one enemy floating up right behind me out of nowhere and just shooting me in the back. That was a terrible bug. So, yeah. But again, if it has been helpful, subscribe, share, like it. Also, please let me know in the comments if you actually found this helpful. If not, that's quite unfortunate. And of course, if you have another question, if you have other things you'd actually like to know about, do post comments there as well. So, there you go. Hopefully, again, this has been of help. This is Imperial Dane signing off, and hope to see you all another time. Cheers!